What's going on, guys? It's going to be our summary markets week 89. As always, we're going to get started with SPY, Qs, gold, oil, USD Jpy, Bitcoin, then Ethereum. And then after the summary markets, we're going to get into our stock and options watch list to close it down. All right, let's get started with SPY. So SPY actually hit an all-time high last week, closing with an all-time high, or breaking the all-time high on Friday, but closing a little weak, kind of closing as a top doji here, almost like an evening star. So what we know about evening stars is it's bearish, but it's only bearish once you get that confirmation of that lower candle the next day, right? So this closed with an evening star on Friday, so we have to wait for a little bit of confirmation on Monday to see if we do break that doji low or the doji high. If we break the doji high, this could act as a micro pullback that will send you higher, most likely to 456 to 457, somewhere around there. If you break the doji low, you do have a few gaps down here. We did fill the 447 gap, but now we have a gap around 450. And then we also have another gap right here around 447 again. So funny enough, we filled the old 447 gap, but then we created a new one. So we have a 447 gap here and then one at 450. We still also have the one down here at 442. So a lot of gaps below us. We have 4 gaps below us currently. So it does give us kind of a small reason to go down. So the bears are going to have a little bit of pressure moving forward. But I would say if we do break the doji high pretty early next week, it should be fairly bullish. The Momo is looking very bullish short term and long term. So we should get some nice momentum next week if we can break that 455 doji. All right, moving on to Qs, pretty much the same story, but we did not hit an all-time high on Qs, so it's a little weaker here. We did fill the local gaps. We do have a gap down here. Actually, I believe this was filled, so this one was filled also. I think that one was filled. Yes, we actually don't have any gaps below us, except for this one here at 360. So most of our local gaps have been filled. Now, if we do break above, say, 377 and a quarter, then you should start pushing towards 382 all-time high. We do have the VWAP below us, and we also have the 50-day moving average. So those should definitely help out. If we do get below the 50-day, then you most likely will come down to around 366.70, or even going down to fill that gap at 360. Moving on to gold, it's actually getting a little bullish here. You can see the trend from here. We have the highs of 1910 to 1830. That's kind of creating the trend. We can see the trend is actually trying to break here. It's not breaking fully yet. You're kind of failing the 200, failing the pivot. But you are getting a little bit of momentum trying to push into that trend. Now, if we do break above, say, 1820, then you're most likely going to see 1860, a little bit of resistance around the 1840s because of those monthly VWAPs. But it does look pretty bullish if we can break that downtrend. Now, if we don't break the downtrend, probably going to come back down to like 1760. Moving on to oil, still maintaining its bullish uptrend here. Nothing really changed. It's kind of getting a little bit more aggressive here. The trend is getting stronger. If we can break above like 85, look for 85.90. And then we have another target around 91.60 to 93. But still maintaining that uptrend, so really no reason to doubt it just yet. If you do break the uptrend, might go back down to retest somewhere around 75. USD Jpy broke out beautifully. We talked about that in the past few weeks of our watch list. It looked like it was ready to break out, and we finally got that massive move that we were looking for. So the weekly is seeing a massive breakout. I think it's breaking a, let's see, about a 5-year high. So we have about a 5-year high on USD Jpy. If you continue to break higher, there is a little bit of resistance around 116 and then 118 on the longer time frames. Now, short term, we do have a little bit of a trend here being tested. This is a very strong trend, so I don't know if it can maintain that strength moving forward. But if it does, then look for those levels that I just gave you. If it loses the trend, then you're looking for around 112 where that pivot is. All right, moving on to Bitcoin. We actually had this charted out on our other chart. So Bitcoin, you hit our targets. We gave you targets around 63.3, 63.9, and 65.9. All three of those targets were hit, and actually that final target almost acted as the perfect top. I did say on stream that Bitcoin typically never double tops. What it does is it breaks through the all-time high, and then it finds a little bit of resistance, pretty local to where the all-time high is, and then it pulls back. It doesn't usually double top like around the same number. So what I said on stream was somewhere around 67 to 69 would be the kind of like sell area where you would be looking to take shorts if you were itching to short the all-time high. You wouldn't want to short the exact level because it very rarely tops out on the same level. So if you would have shorted 65, you would have taken a little haircut there. But now that we've pulled back, you did have a little bit of resistance around that 66 to 69 area. And now we're kind of pulling back to the previous value. This is a big problem if you do not bounce very soon, because this creates a 80% rule on the value area. It's not exactly the same technique, but very similar. And what I mean by that is we created value, then we traded outside of it, and now we are returning back inside the value. So if it finds value back inside the old value zone, then it's very likely going to fall all the way back down to like 50,000, 51,000. We saw this same exact trade. We did call this out in Discord and on stream, I believe on the summary markets as well, where you had the same exact 80% rule to the upside. You found value outside of that range, and then you started to trade back inside that value range, which gave you the very high probability chance to see the other side of the value area, which would have been around 61,000. So the bullish version of this trade has already finished. You got a very nice trade on the way up. Now we're kind of coming back to retest this on the way down. So if the buyers were really strong here, they would bounce this very quickly, anywhere from 58 to around 62. This should be a very big buy zone for buyers. So they should be very aggressive here. The problem is we have not seen that much aggression from the buyers recently. If you guys have any kind of software that can see the overall delta, the cumulative delta or the delta for the day, you will see that most of the delta has been quite negative for the past few days since we hit all-time high. Basically, you had delta go positive when we hit the all-time high, but then as soon as you started to fail around like 67, 60, 66, the delta became very bearish, and the sellers began just taking full control, eliminating the buyers very rapidly. You started seeing very heavy ask side, where the ask was getting very big sell orders. So people were basically putting in these sell walls to hold price down. So it seems like it's being suppressed. Okay. If you have any kind of software that can read a DOM or a depth of market, and you can look at an order book, you will see what I'm talking about. When you get up to the 63 to 67,000 area, we start to see major suppression. People are trying to hold the price down. Now, typically, these types of suppression methods are actually bullish in the long term. They are suppressing it so that they can get more of their bids filled. They can accumulate more at a lower price. So they are actually bullish. They just want to suppress the price locally. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that's exactly what's happening, but that's what it looks like. So if this continues to be suppressed, it very easily could fall back down to 55. If you don't find support around 55, you very easily could go back down to 50. Okay. But in the meantime, I would be fairly bullish as long as we don't lose like 59,000. This is a very big support area. You can see you have a lot of volume support on the value area down here. So anywhere around 59, you should start to see the buyers coming in. Okay. And if we do get back above like 63,000, then you want to look for the big breakout to like 68, 69, and then 72. All right. Basically the same thing for Ethereum. I have not been watching the delta or the depth of market on Ethereum, so I can't tell you if it's being suppressed as heavily as Bitcoin is. What I can tell you is the momentum is weakening. Okay. The Momo is showing you a triple bear div where these triple peaks, these three drives peak, typically a bearish pattern. You are seeing a lower momentum on each peak. Okay. Now, you are still in an uptrend. You are still in a very strong trend. So the divergence can be ignored. But I would say if we can't soon break this flat top around 4,200, then this bear div is going to send it lower, most likely below 39 into like the 37s. Okay. If we can maintain this trend, two of our targets have already been hit, so we're looking for the third target around 49. You could also target the area somewhere around 46. But if that trend does fail, then, like I said, around 37, maybe even 35. All right, that was the summary of markets. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that little walk through. We're going to get into our options watch list now. Let's go ahead and switch over to our other chart. Actually, this is the chart that we need, so let's go over here. Let's start with, I believe Wolf is the first one we're looking at. Yeah, Wolf is the first one we're going to be looking at next week. Funny enough, Wolf is Petco, and it's putting in a bulldog. So the dog company is putting in a perfect bulldog almost. We have a double bottom, pop up. Now we're just waiting for the pullback. So once the head has been formed, and because this, you could actually say this was the head here. Because this move is so kind of elongated, I would look for a bigger head. So something kind of like this. But like I said, you could assume that this was the head. So as long as we stay above 22 to 22.75, this would be fairly bullish. Our next target would be around 24.60, right on that pivot. Also lines up with a lot of monthly VWAPs. And then once we break through that, you're basically looking for the IPO high somewhere around 29 to 30. Next up is CAR. This company just doesn't know how to go down. We called out this breakout like what, 2-3 months ago, actually? It was a long time ago. Let's see. No, it wasn't that long ago. It was actually 2 to 3 weeks ago, excuse me. It was right around 112. We called out the breakout. We were looking for, I think our final target was like somewhere in the 130s. Smashed our final target. We had to extend our targets, and it's already hit 4 of our extended targets. It's hit 143, 148, 163, 168. This thing just goes straight up. It's crazy. The final target on the extension is 187. It looks like it's getting a little toppy finally, but you could have said that multiple times on this run and it didn't top out. So unless there's bad earnings or a bad earnings reaction, I think this thing is going to just keep going, maybe even go to 200. But if you lose this trend, then I'd look for these previous supports around 143 to 130. Moving on to AMD, we talked about how if it broke 108, you should be looking for 116. 116 has been taken. Now, as long as we hold above 116, you should be getting 127. Watch out for an earnings reaction, or you could have a bad earnings reaction. I believe earnings is next week, the 26th. Yeah, it's Tuesday. Asana is another one that just doesn't really know how to go down. You broke the trigger point at 130. Now our targets are 147 to 153. It does need to stay above 125. Crowd is still struggling on this pivot. You've been struggling the 286 pivot for quite some time. If you can break the 286 pivot, I would be looking for 300 on that one. Vail Resorts, actually beautiful chart here. If we look at this on the longer time frames, this thing also doesn't know how to go down. Very beautiful uptrend basically throughout 2020. You have a very nice bull flag breakout on this pivot around 347. So as long as you stay above the pivot, I would be looking for around 360 on this as a local target, and then maybe even 365 to 370 as the extended. Snow is finally back into this 344 level, back into that previous VWAP. It is the highest monthly VWAP close that it's had. If you can get above this 344 level, you should be looking for around 360 to 380, but the final target would be the pivot at 393. Another company that really likes to go up is Net, getting a little toppy. It looks like it's forming a weak high here, but if any pullback maintains above like 160, I think this would be fairly bullish moving into earnings. The problem with Net is you got to watch out for the data companies. They all release earnings relatively at the same time, and they typically follow each other. So say if Net has good earnings, but the other companies like DDOG or Crowd or any of the other ones have bad earnings, it will bring Net down. So you got to be careful on that. As we talked about in the beginning of the video, we talked about how oil was continuing higher. So these oil companies are still in play, Murphy Oil and Marathon Oil. Murphy Oil giving you a nice little bull flag here. If we can break out of this little downtrend, then I would keep an eye on this breakout. You could see, let's see, do we have the bot here? Let's pull it up on the bot and I'll show you. So on the daily, we are still in a buy, right? Let's go to the lower time frames. Let's zoom in here. Go to the 4 hours. The 4 hour is still in a buy. So the 4 hour is actually still in a buy. Let's go to the 1 hour. Okay, so the 1 hour is the one that's chopping out. So once this breaks this little trend, as long as the bot is in a buy, I would say this is a pretty good signal to play this in the long side. You do not want to be taking the sells that are inside this chop because it is a bull flag, right? The bull flag is typically going to be bullish. And the daily and the 4 hour are still in longs, so you want to maintain on the buy side. Okay, so keep an eye on that. If it does break that little downtrend, we should be seeing a nice little breakout into like 30, maybe 31. Marathon Oil already kind of starting the breakout here. It doesn't really have that bull flag pullback. It just kind of went sideways here. But as long as it can maintain above like 1660, 1675, you should be pushing towards $18. But you always want to watch oil when you watch oil companies because they are going to follow oil. So make sure you guys are keeping an eye on how CL reacts next week. Okay. All right, a couple other ones here. MGM, nice little recovery here. This is very unusual. Typically when it breaks a micro pullback, the direction that it breaks is most likely the prevailing direction. This was actually a fake out and you're reversing. So a little unusual, but if it does break above 49, it's still very bullish here. Coupang, we bought Coupang around 26.50, I believe it was. We're holding these shares long term. We're also selling some calls on top of our shares. So we want this to get to $30 or relatively around $30 by November, I believe it's 15th. So right now it looks pretty bullish. If you can get above the 50-day and the VWAP, you should be looking for around 30.80 and then 33. Coinbase still looking pretty damn bullish because of the breakout on Bitcoin, but because Bitcoin is pulling back, so is Coinbase. Coinbase has broken pretty much every single major resistance on the chart. Even if we pull up like a visible range here, let's go to a visible range. I don't know why it always resets my settings, but here we go. So we have a little bit of volume resistance around 331, which is kind of right there around that little accumulation before it nuked on the IPO. But besides that, we have taken pretty much every single resistance. So that would be the next major level, around 332, somewhere around there. Once we're above that, you're basically safe to run all the way back to all-time high. All right, last but not least, Microsoft and the other big tech companies. So let's show these on a fib here on Microsoft. I want to see what this next target's going to be. So if we do take this little high that we made on the doji, so we kind of gapped up and then pushed into the doji, this would give us our little breakout zone targets around 315 to 316.50 and then 320 to 322. Okay, so those are going to be the bullish targets we are watching for next week. If it pulls back below 306, look for 302. All right, moving on to Apple. We did hit our 150 level. I think it topped out almost perfectly on the 150 level. Next level is around 153, but we have to stay above that pivot. You do have earnings, I believe, next week. Yeah, on Thursday. So watch out for earnings on Apple. Facebook gapping down pretty hard, most likely due to Snapchat. Funny enough, Facebook follows Snapchat very well. So if Snapchat has very good earnings or very bad earnings, Facebook usually reacts to the Snapchat earnings basically the next day. So the bad Snapchat earnings definitely hurt Facebook, and we do have earnings on Facebook, I believe, on Monday. Let's see. Yeah, Monday. You got to watch out for that. If they have good earnings, I would look for around 345 to 350. Bad earnings could send you down to 310. Netflix, this thing has just been a powerhouse lately, going straight up. We hit our 660 target. Our next target is around 387. If we can hold above 660, more of a local target would probably be somewhere around 372, 370, somewhere around there. But it has to stay above like 650 at this point. Amazon, little nasty sell-off, but this is a perfect bulldog. This is putting in the bulldog head. So as long as we don't go any lower, this is actually bullish, and you should be looking for around 3,500. But if it does go lower, we would be looking for around 3,250. Tesla just smashing all of our local targets. It's actually into all-time high. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this chart up. Actually, we haven't cleaned our Tesla chart up in a long time, but all of our targets have been hit. 824, 860, 880, 900. Let's go ahead. Let's find some new targets. So long term, I would have to grab this impulse down here. So this would be kind of a far out level, but I'm going to grab a short term one. I'm just going to show you these targets real quickly. 957 to 976 would be the longer term targets for you guys that like to hold longer. But for the more short term stuff, let's actually go down to like a 1 hour here. Actually, I like this impulse here. Let's use this little local impulse. Let's go back to the daily. So these would be our targets moving forward. Around 920 to 927, and then 944 to 950. Okay. You do have to stay above, let's see, I'd say around 900. If you get back below 900, look for around 882 as your support. But all right, guys, that was the summary markets and the watch list. If you guys liked the video, make sure to hit that like button. If you guys are new to my channel, make sure to subscribe. If you guys are new to trading, make sure to check out my How to Trade playlist on YouTube as well. We have about, 20, 25 videos on there going over a bunch of different techniques that I use in my trading. So it'll definitely help you guys out. If you guys want to see my live streams, make sure to subscribe. I do stream 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern. So I will be catching you guys tomorrow. See you later.